We had 2 independent candidates from Kailao, from Kisiteng and from another constituency 007. The Honorable Quintin Salia Kone and the Honorable Lolo Tonge, and from Samalen Pujon district. And everybody knew the story about the Honorable Shaka Sama and his protagonist role in agitating for the people of Malane and how he was hailed as their king. So in an election, in a one-on-one election between an independent candidate of that stature, there is certainly the possibility that he would dealt you the telling punch that would knock you out of the race. So the margin of victory, we are not considering now. The point is, whether you win by 1 ballot, you are qualified. So that is why we had independent candidates from these areas. And I am sure you would hardly, if you go through the history of Sierra Leone, you would hardly find an independent candidate from areas like the Western area. Because it is difficult, because the election is not contested. Like people are saying, oh, there are no representatives from this point to this point. But elections in Western area particularly, and most parts of the country, are not contested on the individual. Because people will tell you that even if a pussy put to the vote for her, people don't even look at the face. They just look at the symbol. So to avoid that, if you get a threshold where people have political parties that advance ideologies, for example, a party that is speaking about environment, a party that is speaking about women's rights, a party that is speaking about health and safety standards, those parties can now either advocate into the minds of the new voters coming into the register, or existing voters whose interests have been environment, women, or whatever, but they don't have the opportunity to channel those issues through any political party. Now, if they have those views espoused by any political party, those parties can also come to parliament.
This reconfiguration you're talking about, will all of this happen in this short time you've provided us this morning to April, when perhaps this thing will be passed into law? Is it possible?
No, the passage of the bill into law is different from the impact of the bill, particularly on this parliament.
Okay.
So the impact of the bill on parliament will be on the 7th parliament, because this is 6th parliament. On the 7th parliament, and I'm not sure I'll be in that parliament, except otherwise in a different position.
Don't you want to be there?
No, I'm not going to contest again.
Okay.
I've seen 2 times, and I think I'm fortunate to be in the Western area and to have contested twice, particularly in the area that I'm coming from, under the first past the post and the proportional representation. I have served 2 terms of 10 years, and I think I should give space to other people to serve, so as to get different types of leadership and different mentality in terms of approach to leadership.
The appetite has grown bigger.
No, it's not the appetite. It's not about the appetite. It's about creating a level playing field. Okay. Because if you monopolize the space, it also leads to tension. Because there are other people that also have good ideas, that also have interest in your position. But if you continue to monopolize the space, it's tension. And people are speaking about proportional representation, particularly the other side, the APC, that PR is not representative, is not reflective of. But let me give you an example. Let me give a very good statistic. In the 2018 election, the Honorable Usman Timbo contested in Moitown. He was living in Lumley, but he wanted to represent Moitown. The Honorable Chairman Ramadama Juba has been representing Bookfields. Yeah. He has lived in Spur Road and now Hill Station, Regent, but he was representing Bookfields. The Honorable Ajibola Malispain was representing Central District. He lived in Spur Road. The Honorable Roslyn J.K. Smith, she was in Godrich. She was representing Kuntolo. Even the former speaker, Honorable SBB Dumbia, he lives in Aberdeen. He was representing Kisim Esmes. So the point is, members of parliament are not attached to constituency by the 1991 constitution. They are representatives of the people of Sierra Leone. That is why the introduction of decentralization, if you look at the Local Government Act that one is repealed now, and the new amendment captures almost the same provision in that repealed act. The 2022 Local Government Act in section 21 says the local council is the highest political authority in every locality, which means every locality has a representation through their local council, through whom or through which they have their issues of development, because local governments are responsible for development. Whereas members of parliament has 3 traditional roles: representation, lawmaking, and oversight. None of these are attached to constituency. So we have been living in proportional representation indirectly in the guise of first past the post.
You know, I've been thinking, Mr. Speaker, this you chose the particular area you wanted to, amend, if you like. Why not do the totality of the law? Is it jurisprudential in your estimation, I mean as a legal luminary, that a country would spend resources on amending just a fraction of the Constitution and leave the rest? There are issues recommended by the TRC report, like social, issues, welfare, for example, rights to shelter, and all of these things, none of which are in this particular bill. It's just elections. Why?
Okay, like I said when I was responding to the questions from Fabian, if you are introducing a new section, like social issues, welfare issues, education, you would have to take that to referendum, which will be 5 times more expensive than drafting a bill, bring it to Parliament that requires 2/3 and for non-entrenched provisions and non-introduction of new clauses. Yeah. So the idea is, because the tension in Sierra Leone has emanated mostly from elections and electioneering processes, it is in the opinion of the Attorney General that the government phased off these amendments, first starting with those that has to do with elections, election threshold, election management, what systems of election we're going to use, and then bring in the other recommendations that has to do with either entrenched clauses or introduction of new subject matter like welfare, like education, like environment, like women's representation. So now you will take that to a referendum. And once the referendum is done, you would now have a new constitution which would incorporate the amendment that would have been assented to by the president, plus the new recommendations.
Let's come back to the PR system, which it seems is what we would be going by for the 2028 elections. So far as it is your own personal opinion on what the threshold should become?
I think when it comes to lawmaking, individual opinions matter very little. I would want to see a system wherein, like what we are working on now as leadership of Parliament, to improve the chamber and to get more seats in the chamber. I want to see a system wherein people can contest independently across Western area, urban, and they will be able to accumulate 5.5, 6% of votes cast across the entire Western area, starting from Benembu onto Owogu. They can accumulate that, people see them, people know them, people understand what they stand for, and they can go to Parliament and advocate the issues of the people. Let me tell you, I am a firm believer, this is not political, I am a firm believer that Parliament should be more represented by independent people, independent candidates.
Yeah.
Because of Section 77(1)(k). If you are under the threat, you were here, you knew what I went through. It is miraculous for me to even sit here and call myself and to be called or to be addressed as Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Few people had the opportunity to have gone through what I went through and survived and get to this point. But it is what God wants. But I believe if we have a Parliament wherein 2/3 of the members of that Parliament are elected as an independent candidate from across the country, we would have a political discourse where the interest of the subject would be national, other than seeking political banner and political identity. And we cannot get that under first past the post. We can never get that. And the idea of first past the post sync exactly and directly to the text of Section 77(1)(k), where it says loss of party membership would lead to loss of your parliamentary seats. So if we have independent candidates, if we have a threshold of 5.5%, people will know that, yes, I know people, I can canvass between Benembu onto Owogu, and I will be able to amass 5.5% of the vote cast. Then we would have a whole lot of independent people representing Sierra Leone in that chamber, and they will do the work of Parliament. So that is my view. My view is, yes, I agree that the 11.5% threshold that was used to determine a seat in the 2023 election is high. I am of the opinion that we should reduce it to around 5.56%, so that we have more people contesting under an independent flag instead of a political banner. Wherein Sierra Leoneans will now begin to see a reform in their mind to elect people that are non-politically aligned, so that when they go there, If they see that this is wrong, they will speak. Nobody would have this albatross around their neck that, oh, we are going to remove you from a political party. It will be anti-political, anti-party activity. You can now see people galvanizing around their representatives, and the representative will focus on the real job. Because the real job of members of parliament is to make law. The real job of members of parliament is to represent, is to see that what the councils that are the highest political authority in the locality to parliament, and make sure that agreements that come to parliament reflect that which would lead to improvement in the localities, that proposals in the budget are scrutinized to the point that every amount, every penny that is included in the budget is accounted for. But in the current structure, in the current political structure that we've seen from 1996 to date, we've seen the budget come through. The budget will always come through parliament. There are contentious issues in the budget, but we'll find a way to harmonize it because we know that we have to vote for it because we have this albatross around our neck.
For many of the people we've had this conversation with on the threshold with the PR system, many of them have said the threshold needs to be lowered. But how can we as a country get these opinions reflected in 2028 elections, especially now that you have this bill in front of you in Parliament?
So what the bill is doing is, the bill is saying, let us repeal section 38(1) and expunged from the laws of Sierra Leone section 38A, which made provision at the time, under the circumstances, for the introduction of the proportional representation. Now that we've had consistent recommendation from the TRC to the Peter Tucker to the Justice Cowan, and Sierra Leoneans are now seeing the beauty of having this PR system, they are saying that we amend section 74(1). That is what this bill is saying. That 74(1) now becomes an entrenched clause which stipulates that members of parliament will be elected through a proportional representation system. That's what the constitution will do. And this provision is that parliament now would now determine in a separate legislation to reflect the provisions of the new section 74(1), the threshold that we are going to set for the election. So it is easy. When 174(1) is amended, we have a new section 74(1) that reflects the system of election. The threshold and type of PR we use will now be determined by a separate legislation, in which we can say 5.5% of the total vote cast in any district can qualify a candidate. Because for parliament, the law already states that an independent candidate can contest. So 5.5% of the total valid vote cast can qualify a candidate to be elected as member of parliament. That is how the threshold will be set out in a separate legislation, but not in the constitution.
Are we guaranteed as a people that we would get all these done before 2028 elections? And I say before because it's also tied to what Statistics Sierra Leone does. Though their census is not meant solely for elections, but it's also from that data that informs elections preparedness. And the threshold also helps preparations for elections, which are pre-elections activities. Are we guaranteed as a people that this homework would be done and crossed before elections in a way that prepares elections management bodies to get their homework pre-elections?
I would say, if you're asking for my personal opinion, I would tell you it's yes. But if you're asking for what is actually the process, it is going to be a consensus, a lot of horse trading between the APC and the SNPP who are represented in Parliament. Because the stage where the bill is now, the SNPP alone cannot pass that bill into law. For us to even talk about proportional representation, threshold percentages, and what legislative instrument Parliament will now pass for the setting of the threshold for the election of member of parliament in a particular district, we first of all need the bill to be passed. And for the bill to be passed, we need a lot of horse trading, a lot of political conversation, a lot of behind-the-scene arrangements. And I will tell you, the APC is primarily opposed to things that we are either A, in the white paper that was put out by the APC, or B, that are in the recommendation by the Justice Cowan Constitutional Review Committee, or I'll tell you, I've said this in a number of that as things stands, the first option of the APC in terms of the amendment of this constitution in Parliament is to walk out.